Hi everyone, and welcome back to our next Brown Bag session. I'm your host Alek Talipov, and if you're new here, this event is brought to you by the Blockchain Professionals community in partnership with Zeev.io. If you're new here, we are kind of think space of blockchain professionals, of blockchain engineers who are interested in the concept of blockchain as a technology, and also for people who are interested in its early adoption. And we host such meetups and webinars every Tuesday. And we have many other interesting things in our community. So please subscribe to our social media channels and visit our website to get all the invitations of our future events and to find the recordings of our previous sessions. So without further ado, I will now invite our today's guests, Dr. Ravi Chamria, and our today's session will be dedicated to the basics of DeFi. And a couple of months ago, some of you may remember that we already had a session with Ravi, which was dedicated to tokenization of real-world assets. And by the way, which was a very good one. And please, yeah, you may go to our website and to our YouTube channel and check out the video of our previous session. So now I'm inviting Ravi. Hi, Ravi. How are you?
Yeah, hi. I'm doing fine. How are you,
Yeah,
Alec?
yeah, me too. Thank you so much for being with us today. Unfortunately, I cannot see your camera, but yeah, but I hope it will be okay. So I will now turn on your presentation, and for our today's listeners, if you will have any questions, just leave them in the live chat in the comments section, and at the end we will go through all the questions. So Ravi, I hope now everyone can see your deck and the floor is yours. Good luck.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ravi. I'm the co-founder CEO of Zeev. Zeev is a blockchain infrastructure as a service platform, one of the leading platforms in the world that provides, blockchain infrastructure for all the major protocols. So today we are starting. This is part of our DeFi series, which is consists of three different webinars. Today's webinar is just talking about what DeFi is, what is the core components of DeFi, and what are the benefits of DeFi vis-a-vis centralized finance, and some of the use cases of DeFi and some of the leading players. But yes, in the episode 2 and 3 of this webinar series, we'll cover more extensive details where we'll talk about specific use cases and getting into the details of it, and then also getting into the details of how DeFi operations work for majority of the popular use cases. So in this webinar, as I mentioned, we'll cover what is DeFi, evolution of finance, C5, decentralized finance versus decentralized finance, and then benefits and challenges. So first, starting with DeFi, I think DeFi has become a buzzword in last 2 years. We saw the DeFi summer post-COVID, and DeFi and NFT became a race because we have been finding what are the more established use cases for blockchain. Blockchain has been around for quite some time, and DeFi and NFT, came as some of the compelling use cases, which showed quite a few benefits of features of blockchain technology in practice. So, what is decentralized finance? The whole idea is, if you break down the word DeFi, the whole idea is how to use blockchain technology to create or turn financial services into a decentralized financial services. So here, the idea is that the counterparties can interact with each other, they can transact with each other without involvement of intermediaries or minimal involvement of the intermediaries. And again, as per the tenets of blockchain, the whole idea is to create a decentralized network. And on top of it, you're running an application which is allowing complex logic, complex transactions to take place using smart contracts and bring in the desired trust, transparency uh, in the entire set of transactions. So, if you see, how the financial technologies have moved over a period of time, starting with transatlantic cable, which allowed transactions to happen across geographies. Those were the early times when technology was being used to transfer information from one geography to another. Post that, starting in 1967 to 2008, we have seen a huge amount of digitization happening. In 90s, we started seeing advent of, online banking, ATM, and using your plastic cards for debit and credit transactions, and so on and so forth. And then during early 2000, PayPal came in, and a lot of fintech players started coming into financial services, mainly disrupting the front end layer of financial infrastructure. And that is what has happened in terms of digitization, that a lot of efficiency has been brought in, a lot of user experience has been improved by bringing digitization to the financial technology. But if you see the underlying backend infrastructure, that still is quite archaic and outdated. The backend infrastructure still takes huge amount of time. Yes, there is a drastic improvement as compared to the non-digitized phase before 2008, but despite the fact that still the settlements take a good amount of time. If you talk about cross-border remittances, it still take a huge amount of time, and there's a huge cost of transaction for all financial transactions that we do. So digitization has improved the entire user experience layer, the whole front end layer, and we see how easy and quick we can make financial transactions today, whether it be normal banking transactions, account transactions, to investment products, to insurance. We can pretty much apply online to any of the facilities. We can manage and monitor those transactions easily online. But at the same time, the backend infrastructure is still not updated. And that is where the whole evolution of blockchain came in. Blockchain came with the whole concept of how to bring in more transparency and trust within the financial services ecosystem, and also give rise to business models to overhaul the entire backend infrastructure. So that is where I believe that the financial technology is now moving, that we need to not just change the user experience layer, but also needs to change the middleware and the backend infrastructure of financial services. So just a small framework to assess, how transition is happening from centralized finance to decentralized finance. So if the question is, are the assets non-custodial? Like, are the assets being controlled by the user or by a third-party custodian? If yes, it is controlled by a third-party custodian, then we are talking about centralized finance. And if they are user controlled, they are non-custodial, then in that case, the next question is, can anyone censor a transaction's execution? If yes, then we are talking about that there's a DeFi settlement in a decentralized way, but there is a CeFi, a centralized intermediary which is involved in the transaction. But if no, then can anyone censor the protocol's execution? If yes, then it is DeFi, but it is centrally governed today, and there is still an intermediary which is running this DeFi platform. So for practical purposes, yes, it is decentralized. You own the custody of your assets. You can do the transactions. There is no challenge in participating in the application. So you get a lot of benefits, but still the governance is not decentralized. And when the governance also becomes decentralized, like what we have seen, the whole onset of decentralized autonomous organizations, the concept of DAO, where uh, the platform or the team which is managing the DeFi platform, for example, Aave or Uniswap, they themselves are being governed by a decentralized governance, and all the token holders have got a voting power, and they can participate in the day-to-day decisions of the protocol. So that is where true DeFi comes in. When we say that it's not just the underlying platform, but the team behind the platform is also operating under decentralized governance. So that is what a true DeFi is. So we are, yes, right now in transition phase. Some of the platforms that we see are have DeFi settlement, but there are CeFi intermediary, and some of the platforms are in fact most of the platforms lie in this uh, category where they are DeFi platforms, but there is still highly centralized governance. And then some platforms, some larger platforms have moved to completely open governance or decentralized governance. So what are the different features of DeFi? So one is that it's permissionless. So you do not require permission to join any network. So if you see some of the popular protocols like Uniswap, which is a decentralized exchange, or Aave, which is a decentralized lending protocol, So you can simply need an internet connection. You connect your MetaMask wallet or any other wallet, and you can start using it. You can trade on tokens. You can participate in lending or borrowing just by connecting your wallet. So there is no restriction on somebody joining it. So it is a classic example of financial inclusion, which does not see any geographical foundations or any other restrictions. Anyone can participate and use the DeFi platforms. The second is programmability and composability, which is again the hallmark of any decentralized application. So, one, using smart contracts, even complex logics can be programmed into smart contracts so that automatic execution can take place. And at the same time, there is a composability. So, you can combine smart contracts and do even more complex transactions, which is something entirely innovative and new in the case of DeFi as compared to centralized finance. There are set of standards. So let's say token standards, ERC20. If you are adhering to the ERC20 standard and creating a token which follows that standard, then that token can easily be understood by any smart contract within the network. And that is what I mean by composability. And that way you can combine two different products, like blocks of Lego, and then you can create another product out of it. So programmability and composability are major hallmark of DeFi applications. And then yes, since DeFi applications are built on blockchain network, so transparency and immutability comes as part of the network. As all the transactions in blockchain are go through a mining or a validation process, and post that the transactions are broadcasted and put into a block, and anyone can go through an explorer like Etherscan or uh, Polygon Scan, etc., and you can see all the transactions, the recipient, the sender, the transaction hash, and the underlying details of it. So there's a huge transparency of transactions for everyone involved. All the ledger transactions or ledger data is public in nature. And then again, the underlying blockchain ensures there's a immutability of data. Once the transactions are validated, verified, then they are stored in the blockchain ledger. And once they are stored in the blockchain ledger, they are immutable. There is no possibility of tampering with the data. So that again gives assurance of integrity for all the different transactions. And then interoperability, which again is something becomes very important, because if there are multiple protocols today, and if you are running DeFi transactions on one chain, and if you are not able to interoperate with other chains, then it creates liquidity silos in different blockchains. So that way there would be a lack of liquidity, and that is what has been happening for quite some time. And that's why we are seeing a lot of startups now who are coming in the space of interoperability and solving this. There have been cross-chain bridges, but the challenge with bridges have been that they are prone to attack, and we have seen quite a few hacks in last couple of years as far as cross-chain bridges are concerned. But now there are some native cross-chain messaging. There are players like Layer Zero or XLR, which are solving interoperability by creating innovative designs and architectures. And then non-custodial, that is one of the major feature, that as a user you control your assets at all points of time. So whenever you are doing a DeFi transaction, you have absolute control over your assets at all point of time. You're not relishing the control to anyone else throughout the entire process of doing a transaction on a DeFi platform. So what are the building blocks of DeFi infrastructure? So first and foremost is, of course, the blockchain network, the underlying network, which is enabling. And what does a blockchain network means? Blockchain brings around the value of trust and transparency and immutability of transactions. And there's a historical audit trail, which is open for anyone to see. And it consists of, it ensures it use various components. So there is asymmetric cryptography that ensures that the transaction or the data has not been tempered, moving from sender to recipient. and it can be easily verified. There is hashing algorithm, and then there is a consensus mechanism or consensus algorithm, which ensures different blockchains use different consensus algorithm. The primary, most popular being proof of stake today, that allows various validators to participate in the consensus, and the one who wins the round gets to write the data to the blockchain. So blockchain network being the it is underlying to DeFi infrastructure. And then, of course, we require tokens, and there are various token standards today, starting with utility token standard or fungible token standard called ERC20, and then we saw the advent of ERC 721 and 1155 for NFTs, and now today we have in fact many more token standards defining different asset classes. So token becomes very important. One token represents the value. Now it may be a utility in the case of utility tokens like Ether or Avex or Matic. And at the same time, if it's asset backed tokens, then there's an underlying asset which is lending the value to the token. So token has got values, and then it has got a set of information, and that the set of information, like who is owning the token. And once you own a token, you have an absolute ownership of it, which is something not true of any offline asset today. And then since it follows a certain standard, this token is easily understood by different kind of smart contracts. So even simple to more advanced transactions can take place using the token standards. And then we have smart contracts, another core component of a DeFi infrastructure. And smart contracts are contracts that allow to write business logic, encode that into the blockchain, and based on predefined conditions or triggers, the smart contract can be executed. So any business logic can be executed with ease. So it helps in automating transactions. It helps in bringing a lot of transparency, because most of the smart contracts are open to audit. And in addition to that, the smart contract based transactions are, and uh, applying the token standards, they are atomic in nature. So that again gives a lot of assurance to the user that when we say that all the transactions are non-custodial and you have absolute control over your token, so if the transaction fails in between, the entire process is reversed, so that at any point of time you are not at risk as far as the assets are concerned or the tokens are concerned. And then as DeFi grew, there was a massive need for stable coins, because at times it becomes very difficult to deal in financial transactions, especially when we talk about a larger adoption of DeFi, that you just rely on utility tokens, which may have a lot of speculative value attached to it, and they're leading to a higher volatility. And due to that, stable coins came to the rescue by bringing in a token which is pegged to the fiat currency, and it has got a stable value. So for example, Tether USDT is pegged to a US dollar, and similarly USDC, which was promoted by Circle, and various other stable coins. So stable coins has today become intermediary currency for quite a few DeFi transactions. And fifth, which I would like to cover here, is the decentralized oracles. Now, oracles, the way smart contracts are architected today, they cannot pull data directly from an external data source. So smart contracts cannot query directly from an external data, any kind of database. And that's where oracles come into picture, where oracles connect the external data or data feed, and smart contracts can take the data from the data feed using oracles. And then since we don't want oracles to become centralized and a weaker point in the entire DeFi or a decentralized ecosystem, that's why there are a lot of decentralized oracle players today. Chainlink being one of the largest decentralized oracle platform that helps provide data feeds from various sources. It may be feeds related to forex, or it may be feeds related to a commodity price. So it can be any kind of feeds that may be required in the DeFi. It may be as simple as the existing price of a specific token so that you can do a transaction. So, what are the differences between centralized finance and decentralized finance? The slides basically summarize what we talked. So, one is the custody of the funds. So, in the case of DeFi, there's a complete custody resides with the user, and in the case of centralized finance, the custody is with a third party. And then there are intermediary platforms where there are third party custodians which manage the custody of the assets, and but the front end layer may be decentralized so that transactions can take place, but end of the day the the assets lie with the third party custodian. And we have seen with FTX and various other failures last year, that centralized institutions who do not have proper management or discipline to manage the users funds, the users funds are always as a risk when there is a third party custodian. DeFi vis-a-vis provide full authority, full control over the users funds to the user. In terms of security, in DeFi, we have seen that there are few challenges of security, especially smart contract hacks, hacks related to cross-chain bridges, and few other hacks. But at the same time, in the case of CeFi also, since there is a central point, it's not well distributed. There are chances of getting a CeFi system to be hacked or exploited by different hackers. DeFi started with few initial services like decentralized exchange was one of the earliest use case. We saw the players like Uniswap, SushiSwap on the Ethereum ecosystem, and then PancakeSwap came in at the Binance ecosystem, and now today, whenever a new protocol launches, we see some of the all of them will have some kind of decentralized exchange to start with. But then over the period of last 2.5 years, we are seeing that pretty much all different financial products are now come under DeFi, whether it be trading, including margins and derivatives, or lending and borrowing, payments, investments, insurance, decentralized insurance. Maybe limited to smart contracts hacks today, but yes, we are starting seeing products across the gamut of different financial products. CeFi, as we know, has been quite mature, and we see all different kind of products. But now DeFi is also catching up, bringing in all different kind of products that we see in the CeFi space. And then in terms of personal information, in DeFi, as it is permissionless, anyone can join the network just by connecting the wallet, and they need to have sufficient tokens to pay the gas fee. They can start transacting on a DeFi platform, and there is no need to share information. And in fact, there were some challenges based on how the transactions take place, like front running was one of the major challenge in the case of decentralized exchanges. But now, as zero knowledge proofs have come in, and zero knowledge proof chains and zero knowledge proof based app chains, etc., are even changing this, bringing a lot of security and privacy of transactions and solving a lot of challenges there. Vis-a-vis that, centralized CeFi platforms do require a proper standard KYC um, and AML checks before anyone can start transacting. And there may be some other restrictions outside the KYC. In terms of risk factor, in the case of DeFi, the risk is related to the technology itself. Like, the smart contracts are prone to hacks. So the smart contracts need to be properly audited, preferably audited by multiple parties. And whenever an update happens to the smart contract, again, it needs to be re-audited. And then there needs to be, continuous monitoring of the systems. In the case of CeFi, there's a central point, single point of attack. So we have seen a lot of centralized systems being hacked or exploited by external hackers. As far as market cap is concerned, DeFi is still a small market, but yes, as per these surveys, DeFi will easily cross almost 300 billion by 2030. So we are seeing a good compounded growth rate as far as DeFi market is concerned. Customer services, so DeFi platforms are pretty much do-it-yourself platforms, and in the case of centralized finance, like centralized exchanges and other, so there is always a customer support, etc. So there are challenges in DeFi when we talk about user experience. So user experience is definitely is much better in the case of centralized finance, but DeFi is catching up. There are a few use cases. I'll mention few initiatives where we are trying to solve the user experience challenges with DeFi. And as far as atomicity of transaction is concerned, DeFi again has got atomic transactions where transactions, if a transaction has got multiple steps, and if transaction somehow fails at step 3 or step 4, the entire transaction will reverse as if that the transaction never happened. That is what we mean by atomic transactions. And that is again a core feature of DeFi. In the case of CeFi, if a transaction fails at certain level, it gets stuck at that level for quite some time until unless and there is a elaborate process to reverse the transactions, and the funds or the either are can be delayed or can be put at risk. So in a nutshell, what are the benefits of DeFi? So one, we have a temper proof ledger of transactions that cannot be changed or updated. So it's an immutable set of transactions that provide an immutable audit trail of all the transactions. So you can go to Ethereum, you can go to Etherscan, and you can see the transactions starting from block one. You can query on different set of transactions. You can see the movement of funds from one user to another, and so on and so forth. And then there's a permissionless access. So DeFi leads to financial inclusion. As we know, uh, quite a high percentage of individuals today are still outside the financial services ecosystem. So DeFi is leading to financial inclusion where it allows a permissionless access to any DeFi platform. Just you need to have internet connection and your wallet. So in that way, it is empowering the user by giving permissionless access, but at the same time, giving full control over the custody of assets. So you own your private keys, you own your assets, and you decide when to do a transaction and so on and so forth. It is a fully transparent network. All the transactions are open to public. All the transactions can be audited. Forensics or analytics can be run on any set of transactions. And then interoperability is something which is now has been solved by various startups like Exila, Layer Zero, or cross-chain bridges, or some native messaging system like in the case of Polkadot network. So so how DeFi works, in terms of the functional components. So one is the infrastructure layer, which has got a decentralized blockchain network on which there are a set of smart contracts, which basically has got all the business logic encoded into it. Taking an example of a decentralized exchange, so there is an underlying blockchain network like Ethereum, Polygon, Avalon, Solana, etc. And then on that you are deploying your set of contracts which has got all the business logic to enable trade or enable staking or farming and various other features that you see on pancake swap or sushi swap or uniswap, etc. And then there is an application layer. uh, there's a Web3 dApp, a decentralized application that provides a user interface. So if you go to Uniswap, you can go to the platform, you can connect your wallet, you can connect various wallets. And then once you're connected, it shows you the balance that you have in there, and you can start transacting. You can do trading of transactions. If you want to convert your Ethereum into USDT, you can select the pair and you can do the transaction, and you can sign the transaction using your wallet, where you are signing using your private key all the transaction payloads. And once you sign the transaction, submit, the transaction gets executed, Ethereum moves out of your wallet, and you get the USDT in return based on the conversion rate that you saw on the screen prior to confirming the transaction. So it's as simple as that. And if you see various kind of options like tokenized digital assets or swap exchanges or borrowing and lending like Aave, and then DeFi derivatives, cross-chain bridges, and various kind of applications that are there. Major use cases of DeFi. So DeFi pretty much today, as we discussed, has touched upon all the different financial products that we have seen in traditional finance. So asset management again is a pretty big use case, and we are seeing a lot of tokenization of real world assets. and then managing the life cycle of the assets. That itself, DeFi brings in a lot of automation, and thus, faster settlements, so improving the backend infrastructure of a financial services system. And then, there is decentralized exchanges, one of the initial use cases of DeFi. And today we see that decentralized exchanges have grown in volumes massively. And especially with the failure of centralized exchanges like FTX last year, and then, some exchanges getting in trouble due to some, lack of compliances or lack of financial discipline. We are seeing there is a massive growth in last 1.5 years of decentralized exchanges. The volumes of transactions on decentralized exchanges have increased tremendously. And then decentralized gaming is again, there are various new models that came in, like play to earn and so on and so forth. So decentralized gaming has come up very well. Then decentralized insurance, players like Nexus Mutual, etc., which are offering uh, decentralized insurance. Initially, the product, like one of the commonest product, is smart contract insurance against smart contract hacks, etc. But as decentralized insurance matures, we are going to see even more products come into decentralized insurance. And then in data and analytics, there are various platforms which allow you portfolio management, allow you to analyze. There are analytical dashboards where you can not just manage your portfolio, but you can mimic the portfolio of some other, and there are very various use cases there. And then, in terms of trading, margin trading, derivatives, extension of the decentralized exchange, where was standard trading, but now various other trading options are available across different, like DYDX and various other exchanges. Staking, I think, is one of the commonest use case, most popular. And when we talk about staking, there's one staking at the to manage the decentralization and security of a blockchain network. So that is like in the case of most of the newer platforms today are using proof of stake. So one, there's a lot of opportunity, and we see a massive investor ecosystem who are staking on various protocols. Apart from that, there's a concept of liquid staking or restaking that again has become very popular, because one of the challenge in staking was that, let's say you have staked your tokens into a staking pool or a staking contract, your token gets locked. And if you want to so that your liquidity gets locked, and if you need, there is only one option: you have to unstake your stake, right? But now with liquid staking, another option has come in to manage the liquidity, where when you stake your tokens into a staking pool, you get some kind of LP tokens or liquidity provided tokens. It's like a receipt that you have provided a certain set of tokens into the liquidity pool or a staking pool, and you are getting a receipt, and you can use that wrap token or the receipt, and then you can exchange that into using different exchanges. So that way, your tokens are staked, still you have open liquidity. So liquid staking has improved liquidity while doing staking. And then tokenization, I think, again, one of the most popular use case that we see today, started with collectibles, non-fungible tokens. Today we have, the use cases spanning fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, using across different asset classes, whether it be non-fungible assets like real estate or physical art, to fungible assets like commodities, gold, silver, graphite, etc. So tokenization, again, we are seeing, started with collectibles, digital art, digital collectibles, but now move to real world assets, starting with some of the digital assets like financial products, bonds, carbon credits, etc., and moving to physical assets like real estate and physical art, etc. And then we have lending and borrowing protocols like Aave, Compound, which provide you, if you want to, let's say you're holding Ether, and but you need cash. So, but you don't want to sell Ether so you can, put your Ether into a protocol like Aave, and you can lend USDT against that, and use that USDT for whatever urgency you have. And once you want to give back the USDT to the contract will return the original ether back to you. So and there is a very small fee so it's like lending process and you pay a small fee. And on the other hand, within the Aave protocol, there are liquidity providers who are putting in liquidity there and they are earning interest. And then there is a spread which goes to the platform. So again, it's like very much like a peer-to-peer lending, but in a using a liquidity pool underneath it, it has made the system very seamless and has reduced the liquidity issues that typically we see in the case of peer-to-peer lending. And then, one other use case is prediction markets. Augur is one of the leading player in the DeFi ecosystem. It's where you allow the users to trade value by forecasting or predicting the outcome of any future events. So there are various newer players who have got into the prediction side. And then DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization. In fact, I've done a couple of webinars specifically talking about different DAOs. As DAOs are gaining more and more popularity, becoming more and more complex. DAOs started with the initial, funding-based DAOs, etc. But now we are seeing DAOs, for even more complex organizations with a larger size of operations. So some of the key DeFi players like Uniswap, SushiSwap on the decentralized exchange, Aave, MakerDAO, and then Compound on lending and borrowing. Chainlink, as I mentioned, is one of the leading provider of decentralized oracles. USDT, USDC, DAI, etc., being stable coins, are the heart and soul of the different DeFi transactions. Nexus Mutual being one of the decentralized insurance player. So, what are the opportunities in DeFi? So, one, as we see, um, there are various financial products that are coming into DeFi, and as smart contracts lends to composability. You can create more complex and more derived products out of combining the existing smart contracts. So this is one big opportunity in the DeFi. So if you see any all the features that we talked about, whether it be more efficiency, more transparency and trust on transactions, having custody of the assets, lends to various opportunities in the DeFi. One, it is a 24/7 available market, so you are not dependent on a small window to do the transaction. It's a global market, so you can participate on any kind of asset, being anywhere. And one of the interesting piece that is happening is whole asset-backed tokens. So let's talk about challenges of DeFi. So one of the major challenges is user experience. Now, in user experience, still people are not very comfortable. It's definitely a very attractive proposition that you own your assets, you own your private key, and you own your assets. But as we know, most of the users today, they are not still comfortable managing their wallet, managing their own private keys. There's a risk if they lose their private key, if they take careless backups of private key. There's a chance that the private key can be hacked. And if they adhere to the best practices of managing the private key, there are chances that they may lose the private key, and that um, puts a lot of discomfort among the users. That is one. Second, we see that when you connect your wallet and you are operating on any ecosystem, you need to pay the gas fee, and the gas fee is typically paid in the native token. So that again becomes a challenge. So let's say you are starting a new wallet and you got tokens of a chain which is based on Cosmos ecosystem. Now you may require native token of the main chain to do a transaction on that chain. So that way, the user experience suffers. And then similarly, there are various other challenges to understand how the transactions are happening when you are signing the transaction, especially if you are not using a browser extension like MetaMask, but you are using a wallet within your mobile app. So how to navigate that? Again, a lot of learning is required, a lot of training is required. But the best part is that this is something that um, people are a lot of startups are targeting this, and today we see players like Web3 Auth or Arcana, which are bringing in social logins, so you can you still own the custody of your assets, you still own the custody of your keys, but still you can use the traditional social login method to connect with your DeFi system. And similarly, gasless transactions like player like Biconomy, which allows you to pay in the token that you are transacting with, rather than paying the gas fee in the native token. So there are a lot of challenges as far as user experience is concerned, and but there are various initiatives which are trying to solve some of those challenges. Smart contract hacks, I think, is another big challenge. And now, what most of the DeFi players are doing, they are using multiple auditors to audit the smart contracts. They ensure continuous monitoring of smart contracts, but that still remains one of the biggest challenges in the DeFi. Liquidity again is a very big challenge because, as I mentioned, there are various protocols today in the market, and each protocol has got own DeFi ecosystem. So liquidity is spread across different DeFi platforms and different protocols. So these and that puts the liquidity in different silos, and makes lack of liquidity in the market. So again, with interoperability coming into picture, especially native interoperability, which is not prone to attacks, it is much more safer and risk-free for the users, and at the same time, allows cross-chain liquidity to happen. So these players or initiatives are trying to solve this challenge. And then, as I mentioned, the volatility or speculative nature of most of the utility tokens again becomes one of the challenge in DeFi transactions, because if you want to do DeFi transactions for, let's say, a business transaction, then in that case you don't want the price to be so fluctuating, so volatile that you lose on the transaction itself. So that's where stable coins have gained a lot of popularity, and they have become the intermediary in most of the DeFi transactions. So these are some of the challenges that we see today in the DeFi space, and yeah, but at the same time, all these challenges are being targeted by different initiatives, different startups in the ecosystem. So in terms of some of the stats, DeFi market has will grow to almost 232 billion by 2030. So it is growing at the rate of 42.6% CAGR, which is a massive growth. And we are seeing in the surge of number of users also who are adopting. Once these user experience issues are resolved, the smart contract hacks are resolved, and then of course compliances and some of the regulatory pieces are resolved, we are going to see many users, more users getting into the DeFi ecosystem. And one of the other piece today is that if you, let's say, go to a lending platform like Aave, right now you can use only crypto as a collateral, and you can borrow crypto against crypto. But at the same time, the whole space of real world asset tokenization is exploding now, and it's just a matter where a matter of time when these regulations and compliances will be in place. So we are going to see more and more real world assets being tokenized, and once we have these tokenized assets, then these tokenized assets can be used as collateral on a DeFi platform. So this is going to again impact um, mortgages and various other lending products to a massive extent. This is basically top 10 countries by DeFi retail value. So if you see India, US, China, Philippines, a lot of Asia Pacific countries, and then Brazil, Canada, some European countries, Germany. So we are seeing that traction is increasing now. But yes, Asia Pacific, India, South America like Brazil and US have been at the forefront. But now we are seeing a lot of adoption in UK, Europe, and various other countries. Now, what we can expect in 2023, one, we are seeing many more mature startups, some of the startups who are solving liquidity challenges. So we see a lot of liquidity providers. We are seeing the surge of app chains where people can, spin off their custom blockchains and application specific blockchains, because One of the challenge and deploying on main chain is that if you grow as a DeFi platform, you may face challenges because you are sharing resources with other dApps or other DeFi platforms. So spinning off your own blockchain, which was a very onerous task a year back or 2 years back, now has become very much simplified using app chains. So we are seeing many startups who are exploiting that, many protocols who are innovating on the layer three or app chains or rollups, whether it be optimistic rollups or ZK rollups and so on and so forth. Interoperability, as you know, I mentioned zero layer, Xlr, they are growing. Zero layer is a new player and doing wonders, bringing in interoperability as a very innovative solution, and which is not prone to risk like cross-chain bridges. Mainstream adoption, I think DeFi is still comparatively new. It's just 2.5 years old. So user experience players are targeting and trying to bring another billion users into the whole DeFi ecosystem, and it is going to take time. But as user experience improves, and as DeFi expands in different jurisdictions and geographies, I think we are going to see a lot more adoption happening of the DeFi. This year, I think second part of 22 and 23, the early part of 23 has been very tough for the DeFi space because of a lot of failures that happen, a lot of smart contracts that have happened. But at the same time, from a technology, its features, its promise, I think it has been established that DeFi is going to stay for a long, long time, and it's going to grow rapidly over a period of time. Yes, there are some teething issues that happens with every new technology, new paradigm. But once we solve these teething issues, we are going to see much, much more adoption happening for DeFi. So yeah, so that's it. I wanted to cover. I know this was the topic itself was basics of DeFi. The whole idea was to cover the different core components of DeFi. What are the benefits? How it differentiates from centralized finance or traditional finance, and then what are the challenges and some of the various use cases or financial products that we see in the DeFi space today. Um, if you are a startup or a venture building into DeFi, do connect with us. We help you manage your blockchain infrastructure, help you launch your scalable app or dApp, whether it be DeFi, NFT, or any other decentralized application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ravi. And so let me check the live chat to see if we have some questions there. So yeah, I see the first question from Konstantin. He asks, could you please comment on risks on edge of non-governmental DeFi area and real life, like Internet cash case?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you are absolutely right. There are risks when we talk about non-governed DeFi areas. So as I mentioned, um, regulations are required, and quite a few platforms, um, because DeFi is a new technology in the sense that it shows you the benefits of how you can bring in decentralized into financial services. You can bring in better financial inclusion. You can bring in more trust and transparency. You can improve the backend infrastructure, make settlements faster, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we should not forget that uh, the compliances need to be in place so that it does not impact the users, as we have seen where users lost their funds, etc. So there are risks in non-governed DeFi areas. So the governance may be self-governance or community-based governance, like using a DAO, or in some cases like tokenized assets. We are going to see governments, bringing in regulations. And once these regulations are in place, there's more clarity on it. I think we are going to see much, much rapid growth in DeFi.
Okay, so I think that was the only questions in the live chat. If you will have some, just leave them in the comments section. And I'd like to remind that this is the series of webinars dedicated to DeFi, together with Ziv, with Dr. Ravi Chamria, and we will have three more webinars during the next couple of months. And our next webinar, as far as we know, is planned for September 19th. and will be dedicated to the core components of DeFi. And yeah,
Yeah.
I
So in
think
the,
that. Mhm.
yeah. So in the next webinar, we'll basically get into the core components, and I'll try to make it more hands-on. We'll show you, connecting wallet, doing the transaction, and we'll talk in more details about atomicity and various other components of DeFi.
Yeah, sounds very good. And there will be also a webinar dedicated to use cases of DeFi. So please, yeah, uh, if you'll have any questions, just let us know. But we would like to hear from us, from Dr. Ravi Chamria, and what details are interesting for you. And I think that was the only question in our live chat today. And if there will be some after we publish the recording, I will let you know. And that's the moment to conclude our today's session. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Ravi, for coming, for hosting this wonderful event. And I hope that everyone enjoyed the session and you enjoyed the session too. We will publish the recording today or tomorrow on our YouTube channel. And yeah, let us know if some topics will be interesting for you. And of course, yeah, we will pay attention to that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ravi. Have a good
Thank you.
day.